It's the weekend, and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome to Jill on Money. Wow, it's been a very big week. Woof. So glad you can chill out a little bit and hang with us. We are the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life and the mystery out of all the other news that's swirling around. A couple of things that I just want to point out. We got a new tax plan that's out. I'm not talking about it for this weekend. I want to do a deep dive into the tax plan. We'll talk about it next weekend. Relax. It's still going to be there. Because I feel like it's too quick. I want to run some different numbers. And it's too hard to get this thing out. You know, the show goes out on Friday to some stations. They don't air it until Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. And so there's just not enough time to really dig in. So relax. We'll get to it. We also got a new Federal Reserve chair. Jerome Powell. He's going to succeed Janet Yellen. And perhaps you're thinking, why do I care about this? I got to tell you, gang, that more than any other institution, an agency of the government, maybe even the president, him or herself, the Federal Reserve impacts our lives in direct ways. So I know you want to just be like, oh, who cares about this? But you have to pay attention. This will impact how much interest you get on your savings account. What's your CD rate look like? What's the cost to borrow money to finance a car purchase, a home, start a new business, maybe get a business line of credit, maybe even the cost of the groceries that you buy every week? Just to give you a little history, because you know I'm a student of financial history. The Federal Reserve is about a little over 100 years old. Congress established it to build a more stable and secure financial system. Because before that, we basically had these crazy episodes of panic, bank runs, failures of banks, and then drying up of credit availability, and all this stuff is happening. And then 1907, we had one of those massive events. It almost took down the whole economy until one John Pierpont Morgan, a.k.a. J.P. Morgan, says literally personally intervened, wrangled all his rich friends to arrange for emergency loans for financial institutions, and we escaped calamity. And so anyway, Congress established the Federal Reserve System in 1913. So that was just the system to have a central government bank. But it wasn't until after the Great Depression that the policy-making arm of the Fed was actually created. That was through the Banking Act of 1935. And that's why when you hear like, oh, the Fed had a meeting, like this past week, the Fed had a 2-day policy meeting. That's the Federal Open Market Committee. And the whole point of that committee is to create and implement policies that influence the cost of money and credit. That's it. That's what they do. They want to have a healthy economy. And by the way, it wasn't until the late 70s. So we went from 1913 to 1935, the late 70s, that we actually had two explicit policy goals that the Fed should pursue. Price stability. Remember, that was a time of hyperinflation. So price stability at that time meant low and stable inflation. And strong enough economic growth to foster maximum sustainable employment. So these goals together, that's called the Fed's dual mandate, right? Very calm, normal prices, a good enough growth rate to create lots of employment. And the Fed's got lots of tools. You hear about the interest rate tool. That's the Fed funds tool. But obviously, the Fed went out and bought bonds after the financial crisis. And that was another tool that was out there. So in essence, the Fed kind of has morphed in many ways because it has gone from it's the system that brings banks together. It provides banks with financing, and banks provide us with financing. It has become the modulating force around inflation and deflation, because remember, we were worried about prices not rising, actually staying still or going down during the financial crisis. So it's the price stabilization mechanism and the body that helps sustain growth in the country using interest rates and other tools in the toolbox. So now let's get to Janet Yellen, who followed Ben Bernanke. Ben Bernanke and Janet Yellen sort of cut from the same cloth. Academics, very concerned with economic growth in the aftermath of a crisis. Ben Bernanke's expertise was actually the Great Depression and how central banks kind of screwed up the aftermath of that. Janet Yellen followed him, appointed by President Obama, first woman chair of the Federal Reserve. And, her 4-year term is up in February, and she has pretty much been in lockstep with Bernanke. She was his vice chair, and they believe that low interest rates are necessary to spur economic growth. They're slowly, both, through Bernanke and now Yellen, they are slowly unwinding all of those crisis era measures. Now enter Jerome Powell. So just so you know, he's voted with Yellen on interest rates every single time. He's never offered a dissenting opinion in speeches that, like some other Fed officials have, like Lael Brainerd. She disagreed with Janet Yellen a million different times. But Powell's been pretty specifically in lockstep with Yellen. But there is one way that he may be different, and that is that the regulatory approach by Powell may be different than Yellen. And that may be why Yellen lost her job. Because Yellen has argued that the big banks, the systemically important financial institutions, must have great oversight. The Fed needs to keep its hand on top of that process and in that process through stress tests or through different rules like the Volcker Rule, which prevents banks from trading their own accounts. Powell, not so much. Powell, by the way, also is not an economist. He is a lawyer by training. He went into private equity and then became a Fed governor. He is a Republican. But I think the one area where he might be a little different, regulation. He might ease up on the banks. We'll have to wait to see. Congratulations, Mr. Powell. If you'd like to come on the podcast or the radio show anytime, we'd love to have you. But remember, this does impact you. You really should care. And Mark, let's put a link to the blog post, Why the Fed Matters, so that people can see that in our show notes. Would that be okay with you? It seems all right? Good. Jerome Powell, congratulations. We'll look forward to hearing more from you. One more Fed meeting, December. You can expect one more quarter point rate increase. That's what I think is going to happen, and that's what the market thinks. All right. Now, back to the show. Your calls. It's Jill on Money, 855-411-JILL. Send an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Do I invest here? Should I put my money there? Jill Schlesinger can help you. Back to Jill on Money.
You're back with Jill on Money. This is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. I'm Jill Schlesinger, and we are so delighted that you're spending the weekend with us. The first weekend of November. How did that happen, Mark? Oh, my gosh. If you have a financial question and you would like some help with it, or maybe it's a career question, I like some of those also. I'm kind of fascinating with the choices we make in our lives, mostly because probably the decisions you make about your career are more important than, what your allocation is of your 401k. But that being said, it can be about your investments, maybe your taxes, maybe your retirement, maybe your kids' college, or anything else. Give us a holler. 855-411-JILL. That is our phone number. You can send an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. And if you've missed any of our previous shows, just go to our website, jillonmoney.com. At the top of the page, we have a link that goes over to YouTube and gives you all of our shows. And Mark does a phenomenal job with that. Right now, we're going to a call. It is Sue, who's on the line from the Bay Area. Welcome to the program, Sue. What can I do for you?
Hey, Jill. Well, my husband and I are in our mid-50s. We're looking to retire in about the next 5 to 10 years. Me earlier, I think he's okay working 10. But what we saved about $1.9 million. So we have that, but now we're at a point where we're not quite sure what to do. We're pretty good at the saving part, but now we need to turn it around and figure out how much we really need to retire, and then how to turn that around and make it a stream of income versus just saving.
I know. It's so funny. It's like, well, I'm very good at the accumulation phase, but the decumulation, that's a whole different ball game, isn't it?
Right.
So it sounds like that's fabulous. Tell me a little bit about, you said you're in your mid-50s. Kids?
Mm-hmm. 2 kids, one out of college on her way. The other has 1 year left in college. And that's all. We're all taken care of there, so that's good.
Great.
And
are you going to stay in the Bay Area upon your retirement, do you think?
Yeah, that's been a topic of discussion for a lot of friends too. But I think we love our neighborhood, so we're gonna probably stay put.
Okay. And right now, have you guys done the fun task of tallying up how much money you actually need to live on?
I could guess. But
give a guess.
Honestly,
give a guess, just for the heck of it.
I'd say probably $10,000 to $12,000 a month.
Okay, fair enough. And when you retire, you in 5 years, your husband in 10 years. See how I've just done that, right?
I'm trying for 3 now. But
oh my gosh, you're really all right. Let's just give me 5, will you, so I can get to 59 and a half. Okay, presuming that, will either of you be entitled to a pension?
At 65, I get a walking pension of about $800.
$800 a month?
Yeah.
So that's nice. So it's like that could kind of pay for your coffee habit.
Yeah.
In retirement.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so that's good. Yeah. What about any other income besides the money that you've socked away? You'll have Social Security, both of you. But is there any other income, any passive income, any maybe from a rental property or anything like that?
No outside property besides our house.
No great uncle who has bequeathed you a trust that is okay. None of that. Okay,
not that we know of.
Darn it. Okay, now here's my question. More questions for you. Did you guys have you done any calculations as to what you think you need versus what you have?
Like
like a retirement, just like a retirement calculator. Have you played with any of that?
A little bit, yeah. So I think if we get to $3 million, we should be good.
Okay. All right. That sounds fair enough. Own your home?
Almost. We're less than $200,000 away from owning it.
How much would you figure the house is worth?
Probably 1.6.
Okay. So you'll be done. I mean, you won't have a mortgage when you retire, essentially.
Right.
Okay.
But I figured that money will probably go to health care.
Oh, that's an interesting way to think about it. Okay. Fair enough. How much money are you guys saving right now? And you're in your 50s, so you each are putting money into retirement accounts?
Yeah, we're both maxing out our 401ks at work.
Okay, so you're both putting in $24,000 a year, right?
Right.
Okay. Anything else beyond that you're doing in the saving, or has it just been like you got through college and that's enough?
Well, exactly. We got through college and that was it. But we were able to qualify for Roth IRAs in the past, and I don't think going forward we're going to be able to qualify for those. But we have about 130 between us in our Roth IRAs.
All right. Well, I mean, not qualifying means you're making money. So how much do you guys earn together?
Around $220,000.
Okay. And is it split evenly, or do you make more or he makes more?
He makes more.
Okay, good, because we're going to make him keep working, remember. Don't forget.
Exactly.
That's part of the whole, that's our game plan. Okay. And right now, beyond the kids being done, and thank goodness that, the college years are over, how about aging parents? Is there any, or even siblings, anyone else that you feel like you're going to have to take care of in the future that would fall to you?
Well, that's a good question. No, unfortunately, my parents are both passed, and Al's. No, everyone's great.
Okay, good. And
in good shape and in good shape financially. That if they're okay.
Okay.
If something were to happen.
All right.
They're okay. Yeah.
All right. That's real. That's good. I mean, I just feel like you're the age where, oftentimes you have like a little bit of both, right? Okay.
All
so
our friends. Yeah.
I know. It's so funny. I was just saying this to my agent, which is a funny thing for me to say because I think it's funny that I have an agent, and I was talking about things that he's like, "What are you working on? What are you excited about?" And I'm like, "I'm just so freaking focused on how much time and energy aging relatives take." And he's a little younger than I am, and he's like, "What? What are you talking about?" And I just said, oh, my God, every time I get together, if anyone who is over the age of 50 is listening, there's no time where you get together with your friends where you don't start talking about this topic. So if you're under the age of 50, enjoy your blissful moment because it's coming, okay? Because this whole period of time is coming. All right. So, Sue, it sounds to me like you are going to have $3 million because are you sort of saying to yourself, you're doing the back of the envelope, like if I had $3 million and I took 3% of that, that's $90,000. That'll get me most of the way there, plus Social Security, and I'll be fine. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Exactly. But so our situation is, I'm pretty sure we need a financial planner. We've had financial planners in the past, and then when we realized, John Bogle and Tony Robbins, and I started reading books. Shame on me, but you realize when you're sitting down with someone, you're paying them $10,000 to $15,000 a visit to sit down with them for an hour or two a year, twice a year. That the value wasn't there, and I probably wouldn't have seen it if we didn't have the kids' money in a Vanguard 529, where I'm watching that go up and up and up and up, and I'm watching the other not, and it was pretty comparable.
Oh, my God. Nothing like a stark comparison. So, Sue, I'm going to ask you to hang on the line because let's have a good conversation about whether or not you actually need a financial advisor at this point. If you do, who is the type of advisor that would be good for you? What are some of the questions? I just want to hear a little bit about that. I also want to hear that, as you just said, you had a stark comparison. So I want to hear about how that the bulk of that $1.9 million is currently invested. And then we got to figure out how to lock this down and make sure that you don't give any of this money back too quickly because, the bear market could be just around the corner. I'm not suggesting it is. I said it could be. You are listening to Jill on Money, 855-411-JILL. Send an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger takes the mystery out of your money.
You're back with Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, we would love to help you out. Our phone number here, 855-411-JILL. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. Before the break, we were on the line with Sue. She's from the Bay Area, and she and her spouse have done an awesome job of saving. They've got $1.9 million socked away. They're in their mid-50s. And Sue wants to retire tomorrow. No, not tomorrow. A few years, maybe 5 years. Husband will keep working, probably for another 10 years. And, based on that and based on the money that you guys have already accumulated, as well as the money that you continue to put away, and probably due to the fact that the kids are pretty much done with college and you're probably going to end up putting more money away in the next 5 years or so, I feel very comfortable that you will accumulate the nest egg that you need to generate that 10 to 12 grand a month. So that, by the way, is really the biggest hurdle when it comes to retirement, Sue. So kudos to you, because it takes a lot to get there. So now you've done the hard part. Tell me a little bit about what you've done with your money so far. How have you invested it? Have you worked with an advisor, or have you done it mostly yourselves?
Well, currently we're with Vanguard. So we talked to one of the Vanguard financial advisors there, I guess. And, it's pretty basic. It's 25-25. It's a quarter split between total stock market, total international, total bonds, and total international bonds is what they recommended.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I played with it a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but pretty much that's where we are. But what we've done is, it's funny you just mentioned the bear market. We just had this chat. We've been talking about, God, the market's super high, never been this high, and we've lived through the 2000 drop, and we've lived through the 08 drop. So,
Ugh.
we've been burned. We understand what that feels like. So we actually just moved all of our tax-deferred money over into money markets.
Oh, my God. Are you crazy? Why?
Maybe we are.
Oh, geez. Come on.
I know. Well,
Okay, hold on a second.
we
I'm going to
did.
make you feel better about this. First of all,
right.
thank God you did it in your tax-deferred account, so no tax liability. Right. So that's number one. So of the $1.9 million that you guys have socked away, is most of that in tax-deferred retirement accounts?
Let's see. About half.
Okay,
About
half. Half in retirement accounts. Okay,
Yeah.
Here's the deal. Even if you were right, even if the colossal, horrible bear market and even beyond were to come crawling out of the cave and gobble up some of the money, the biggest problem that you have is you would never know when to get back in. You just wouldn't. Because you know what happens. Even if you're smart enough to get out now, let's say the market keeps going up, it goes up, then the market collapses. When it collapses, you're going to be like, I'm not going near that danger. It's like kryptonite. I'm not touching that. Are you crazy? So it's hard to get back in. But I will say that there is a good reason 5 to 10 years from retirement not to be 100% in stocks. And the other thing to realize for you guys is that when you retire, you are not going to need to access all of that money at once.
Right.
So
Right.
think about this. You're 60, you're probably going to live 30 more years. So you are not actually investing for the next 5 years. You're investing for the next 35 years. And because of that, you really do need to have a more diversified portfolio. Now, I am not saying it's just a quarter, which, by the way, you probably will stay out of trouble sticking to that allocation. But I do. So that allocation that you have essentially was 50% stocks, half international, half U.S., 50% bonds, half U.S., half international. It may be, is that right?
Well, you were when we started, but then because the market's been on a tear, honestly, we were probably weighted 85% in equities.
Okay.
So we were heavy, and I knew we had to do something, and I really wasn't keen on buying bonds. And I'm like, cash and bonds are both safe, so I'll just put it. We'll just hold it, money market, whatever.
Okay.
So that was the rationale behind it too. It's like we got to pull back from the equities. We're too exposed.
Yep.
So we'll pull back a little bit, and instead of buying bonds, I'll just wait for a buying because I'm okay going in when it's kryptonite and like.
All right. So let's just be clear. Let's say that really what you want your allocation to be is more like, I'm going to just give you by the way, cash is an asset class. You might say, I want 20% in cash. I want 40% in stocks, and I want 40. I want, let's say, 60. Maybe I want 20% in U.S. bonds, And then maybe you want 20% in something else that looks like been horrible lately. I have to go see what's looked like it's been beat up. But in other words, maybe you're right that you should have some cash as part of your allocation. But to make wholesale moves in and out, I think you're going to drive yourself crazy. So,
well, we typically don't. I mean,
I know you're giving me the big confessional, and I get it. You've been like good doobies doing this, doing what you should be doing. I get it. I totally get it. But I think that my point would be, I think we need to create an allocation that's going to see you through the next 5 or 10 years so that you feel comfortable. Even if the market were to go down, that you'd feel good, that we could rebalance on a quarterly basis. So that meaning that the reason why you blew up to 85% is that you just sort of let it go. But had you been every single quarter making sure that your allocation was exactly what you wanted it to be, that 85% position would never have blown up to that extent. So what I think we need to do, and when I say we, you, because it's not my money, although I'd be happy to help you with $1.9 million, that we need to come up with a game plan around what's the allocation, and more to the point, what does a retirement plan look like for you guys? Do you need a helping hand in the form of a certified financial planner, of someone who can really take their hands around this situation? Sue, you have just made history. You are now on for a third segment. Does not happen that often because I want to talk about who should be helping you in this process or whether you can do it yourself. So hang on one more minute. It's Jill on Money, 855-411-JILL. Send us an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
.401k, IRAs, refinancing. She covers it all. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back with Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, 855-411-JILL. Send us an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com. Okay, Sue from the Bay Area. I will finally let you go. You realize that, right? Are we having a good time, though? We're like walking it through.
Yeah.
It's all good.
No, it's fun. Yeah.
Okay. So you get my theory about let's give you a nice, solid, kind of all-weather portfolio so that you can stick to the allocation and rebalance going forward. My next question is, do you want to do it yourself or do you want some help?
I am not opposed to help at all. But
okay.
I think the help, I don't want someone just, I appreciate stock pickers. I'm not a fan of managed funds anymore.
Mm-hmm. Good.
And so I'm looking for taxes, like when the whole thing about Social Security, when to take it, how to take it, all that, all those questions. Then the asset allocation. You're right. That's a big key. So, yeah.
Have you had experience with a financial advisor in the past? You said Vanguard, and they'll give you here do these 4 funds. But tell me about what the past has been like for you guys.
So we were with so friends of ours recommended a financial advisor. I won't say the name because it's a very nice guy, really nice guy. And he did a good job in his world for us. But then when I finally, belatedly, shame on me, asked, are you a fiduciary? He goes, no, and you don't want me to be. And I'm like, I do. I really do. And he goes, no, because then I can't get you all these different things. I'm like, no, I want you to put my interest first. I really do. So that kind of put the nail in the coffin there. So, and honestly, comparing, the Vanguard stuff to their stuff, is like, are you kidding me? We're paying how much for, half the returns we're getting over here? It's really basic.
Oh my God. I think that's.
I never would have known. You know what? We probably would still be with them if we didn't have the Vanguard funds to look at and really compare. So it was really a good lesson. And maybe you shouldn't have all your money in one place.
Let me ask you something, though. How did you know to ask the question about fiduciary?
I started reading. That was I was reading Bogle's books. I read Bernstein and Malkiel and all those guys, David Bach, and they're like, all of a sudden, fiduciary started coming up and up and up, and just when you don't see the money, you don't write a check for the fees, so you don't sense that it's as much as it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then the kicker was the taxes at the end of the year, because our managed funds had turnovers of 100 to 120%.
Oof.
And those are at your current income levels. They're not at the capital gains rates. Those are at current income levels. And it's like, wow, we are paying a lot of taxes. What's going on? So
that is so smart of you, but it's just funny because I have to tell you that this is so. Mark, keep this call. I need this call sent to me. I had a fight with somebody who who is a regulator, and the person said to me, "Everybody knows what fiduciary is." I said, "You're wrong." I said, there's tons of smart people. They don't know. They're not, you know what I mean? So what I think is you're 100% right. And I think that you do need a retirement plan. I think that you do need help. I'm not sure you need someone to actually manage your money, but I do think that it would be well worth it for you to make an investment that you and your husband sit down and you say, look, it's a perfect time, 5 to 10 years out from retirement. Are we on track? Is there anything else we should be doing? You tell them that you're feeling wimpy. You tell them that. You say, look, we've been growth investors our whole lives, but we're getting too close. We don't want to go through a nasty, 50% loss of our portfolio again. Build us something. Help us understand which money we tap when. How should we do that? Okay, and so you can do that with a type of an advisor who's a fee-only advisor. So a fiduciary for sure, but there's somebody who you can just say, here's $5,000, here's $10,000, build us a plan, okay? And then that plan, you can choose to have the person implement it, but you can also choose to do it yourself. And the nice part of it is that it sounds like you're like actually more into this perhaps today than you were 10 years ago. That right. You may want to do it yourself. It was funny. I just pulled up something that I wanted to share with you. I created a portfolio during the debt ceiling doomsday scary times, which is already 100 years ago, right?
Right.
You want to hear my wimpy portfolio? Check this out. You're going to love it. 20% laddered CDs, okay? 15% cash, 20% short to intermediate bond fund, 15% international bond fund, 10% total U.S. stock market index, 10% international stock index, 5% emerging market index, 5% commodity fund. That was it. It's so wimpy that someone wrote in and said you will never make money with that portfolio. And I promise you, even if you had done that and you missed the whole rally up, you still would have made money. So someone can build a portfolio like that for you. And what I'm going to ask you to do, Sue, is to hang on the line because I am going to send you some names of a couple of Bay Area people who I think would be very helpful for you. And we're going to grow that 1.9 into 3. Somehow or other, we're going to figure out how you can I'm not going to say you're going to avoid the next downturn, but we're going to mitigate the damage from the next downturn. Fantastic. Great job for Sue. She's saved a ton of money. Let's help her keep it. It's Jill on Money, 855-411-JILL. Send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back. You're back with Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question or just a comment, feel free to give us a holler, 855-411-JILL. Send us an email, ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Hey, stay tuned. In the second hour, we've got an amazing interview. George Anders wrote a book that just captivated me because it is contra everything else that's out there in the universe. It's called You Can Do Anything, The Surprising Power of a, quote, Useless Liberal Arts Education. Liberal arts graduates, don't worry. Not all is lost. You do not have to be an engineer. And by the way, parents, grandparents, your kids don't have to be engineers to make it in this economy. So stay tuned for our interview with George Anders. It's very cool. We got an email from somebody named Michael, who's an attorney Mike, who is just perplexed by why I wrote an article about Richard Thaler. He's the guy who's a behavioral economist who won a prize by the Nobel Award for his work around, why people do what they do. So he writes, the Hartford Courant printed your pen to Richard Thaler for his prize-winning economic work. I am baffled. Mr. Thaler, quote, proved that people are irrational, even bright people, when it comes to economic decisions. Are you serious? The ancients knew this. In my own field, he's an attorney, I deal with clinical psychologists in cases where children have been removed from parents. The psychologist performs psychological evaluations to evaluate if the parents are suitable to have their children returned to them. If so, under what conditions? Many people assume that psychologists are dry and rational. Mostly they are. But numerous learned, journaled articles show that clinical psychologists can be just as irrational as ordinary people. They're subject to anchoring bias, attribution bias, selective recall, other human factors. So why do you think they're not irrational about money, even if they're educated? Why would someone get a Nobel Prize for proving this? Blah, 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 blah. Why would a bright and educated person like you glorify this? Is there no real financial news to write about? Thanks, Attorney Mike. You're angry, dude. Relax. All right. You can even write nasty things. I'll read them on the air. It's Jill on Money, 855-411-JILL. Send an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
It's the weekend, which means it's time for Jill on Money, the show that makes money fun and just happens to answer all your financial questions. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome to second hour of the program. It's so exciting, isn't it, just? If you've got a financial question, we would love to hear from you. The phone number here is 855-411-JILL. You can always send us an email, ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. I should note the open enrollment. We've talked about open enrollment for a while for the 151 million Americans who are getting benefits through work. We've talked about Medicare open enrollment. Well, it is now open enrollment for the Affordable Care Act. And this is going to be a very strange open enrollment period for the 2018 health insurance exchanges because the season is cut in half. So I think that basically every time we're on the air, we need to remind people that enrollment, which started on November 1st, it's actually ending Wednesday, December 15th. Very tight time frame here. OK, I should note that there are some extensions. 8 states and in Washington, D.C. have extended open enrollment beyond December 15th. And a lot of you live in these areas. California, Colorado, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New York, Rhode Island, and Washington have extended deadlines for Affordable Care Act. Yes, we know that this is also annoying. They are shutting down healthcare.gov every Sunday from midnight to noon for maintenance during open enrollment, which I think is ridiculous, but that's just me. So we're going to get into this, but most importantly, just know that that's happening. And we'll talk more throughout the programs in the next few weeks, okay? Hey, today we've got a really great guest, switching gears a bit. This is somebody who's written a fantastic book about a liberal arts education. His name is George Anders. The name of the book, You Can Do Anything, The Surprising Power of a Useless Liberal Arts Education. Of course, as a liberal arts graduate, I am very interested in this. So here is my interview with George Anders. Okay, so George, why did you feel the need to write this book, The Surprising Power of a Useless Liberal Arts Education, or You Can Do Anything being the main title?
So a lot of the trigger, I'm an alum of various schools, and I get a lot of people who are a year or two out who find me in the alumni directory, and they know I'm doing something in the world of writing and media, and they call me up and say, hey, can you straighten me out about my career? And we have these wonderful coffee conversations, and they're full of energy, and they're bright, and they're talented, and the job market just isn't working for them. And then in my day job, I write for Forbes and Technology Review and other publications. I talk to a lot of executives, and they go, we're having trouble hiring the right kind of people. We've got this very, rigorous, rigid system, and it's just not bringing us the people we want. And I kept thinking there's this huge mismatch between talent and opportunity. We've got good people who aren't finding the right jobs. We've got employers who don't know how to find the people with spark and energy. And I wanted to offer a book that would help the whole talent and opportunity market clear a little better.
Whenever we see these surveys of the highest paying majors or the highest paying entry level jobs, they seem to be all focused on engineering or math skills or any STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. And it seems to me that that's where so much energy is going. And I always hear from similar types of people as you in terms of the youth of America, like, I don't like those areas. Am I doomed? And are they?
You've got a lot more freedom. And in fact, one of the sad things is everyone's fixated on starting salaries. And yeah, a nice starting salary is good, but you're going to be in the workforce for 30 or 40 years, and you should be spending at least as much time thinking about where am I going to be 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And a lot of the high-paying STEM fields plateau after a while. And a lot of the fields where, of all things, philosophy degrees, you'd think that would be one of the most impractical ones. And philosophy majors don't make a lot their first 6 months out of school. But by the time they get 10 years out, they've become lawyers, they've become corporate executives. There's a surprising number of CEOs with philosophy degrees. And if you think about it, in college they were taught how to rule the world, and give them enough time, they eventually do get to rule the world. So there are a lot more opportunities than people think, and we've sort of shortchanged a whole generation by getting people to think about nothing except the starting salary.
And of course, I know that, certainly on this program, we hear from younger professionals who are servicing all that debt. And they're really uptight about it. And I think that's why they are focused on that starting salary. Is that the original sin in this process, that we have all these young professionals starting out with a big load that is weighing them down, and they do go for that highest starting salary?
I think that shortens everyone's time horizon. When you've got an interest payment that's due in 30 days, it's hard to think 5 years or 10 years. So we could have a whole conversation about how to get through college without as big a debt load. Graduate within 4 years would be the first piece of my advice. And I think a lot of the situations where people get in hard places, if you switch your major 4 times, if you switch your school twice, then you're 5, 6, 7 years into the process. And the more you can keep that tight, pick up some community college credits, transfer in, figure out how to get the final degree from a name school, but don't be hesitant to build up some of your credits at a lower cost place. So the more people can do to keep debt down, the more freedom you buy for yourself.
You start the book with a couple of phrases that really jumped out at me, and I want to just read a couple of sentences early on. You say, the human touch has never been more essential in the workplace than it is today. And you also say that the job market is quietly creating thousands of openings a week for people who can bring a humanist's grace to our rapidly evolving high-tech future. What is a humanist's grace, and where do people learn it in that liberal arts education?
So let me give you an example that really stuck in my mind. I live in Silicon Valley, so I get to see a lot of the tech sector. And a lot of our listeners may know OpenTable. It's the outfit that you go online and you book your dinner table for whatever nice restaurant you want to go to, and they'll show you a whole menu of choices. So anyway, OpenTable has a whole second business where they go into restaurants and they do consulting for them. And they tell them, hey, you're getting too many cancellations on Valentine's Day. Here's how you need to organize your Valentine's Day list. Or you're really doing really badly on Tuesday night. You ought to think about having a promo for Tuesday night. And all of this is based on an enormous amount of data. But the whole data business can be run by about 8 or 10 engineers. What they really need are more than 100 people with iPads and a smile and a nice patter to go into restaurants and sit down with the people who run these restaurants and say, hey, how's it going? Your new menu looks great. That's really interesting, the cocktails you've added. And by the way, here's something that I can tell you about the way you could run your restaurant better. And they end up hiring a lot of English majors and psychology majors and sociology majors because that job is 2/3 about connecting with the guy running the restaurant and 1/3 about giving him the data dump. They've tried just putting it on a menu and saying, hey, click on this, and no one pays attention. If you're running a restaurant, you want to have someone communicate with you that understands you and cares about you. And you get a lot of that from the humanities and social science classes, and sitting in that seminar figuring out how to solve problems and understand other cultures is actually going to make you really well prepared for that kind of job. You only need a college degree for it. It paid $90,000 to $100,000 a year. And it's a great opportunity. It's the kind of thing that's missing from the conversation about what can you do with your degree. The industry is full of opportunities like this.
Okay, we'll be back with our interview of George Anders in just a moment. If you've got a financial question, give us a call, 855-411-JILL, or send us an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Annuities, IRAs, 401ks. She covers it all. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back with Jill on Money. And if you've got a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. Our phone number here is 855-411-JILL. You can send us an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com. Now, for lots of you folks who have kids or grandkids in college, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, no degree is worth it unless my kid can get a job as soon as he or she graduates. And there is something to be said for that. But there are some skills that you can develop, perhaps as a liberal arts major, that are quite valuable in the current economy. Just think about this. You know, even engineers can admit this about themselves. Sometimes that straight, narrow thinking, which comes to a distinct conclusion, an answer, can preclude some of the softer skills that are necessary to navigate a workplace. And what I have found is that even when I'm working with people who are quite technical in nature, their ability to explain some of the aspects of their technical work and be able to understand, does this other person understand what I'm saying, is quite valuable. That is what our guest, George Anders, the author of You Can Do Anything, The Surprising Power of a Useless Liberal Arts Education, that's what he's talking about in this part of our interview. You also talk about a couple of skills that maybe those in the liberal arts or, as you said, sitting in a seminar or even thinking about what you're writing about, whether it's art history or, 20th century British fiction. You talk about how important it is to listen, read the room. You basically talk about how getting different people on the same page. You call it the rapport sector. And I read those different pieces. I thought, this guy basically says that if you get a liberal arts degree, you basically have the essential skill set of a salesperson. I mean, when I think about really wonderful salespeople or anyone in any managerial role, those are the things that matter. Listening, reading the room, and building rapport. Why is it that a liberal arts degree or someone in that major is more likely to have those skills than someone in, say, STEM areas?
So in almost any liberal arts field, you spend a lot of time thinking about people with very different values and cultural backgrounds than yours. And you can get this in the classics, thinking about ancient Athens and Sparta. You can get it in sociology, thinking about people who are in prison. It doesn't matter what population you're studying. You're starting to figure out, hey, these people think differently than me. They value different things. They come out of a different heritage. What do I need to do to connect with them? And when you talked about these being good skills for sales, I would argue that to some degree we're all in sales. Mm-hmm. And if you look at who's in Congress, who's the mayors of the city, who are the governors, politics is about bringing people around to your point of view or incorporating some of their ideas. If you look at who's running the big foundations, they've got to figure out how to, bring charity into the world. Supreme Court, there's no end of really high-level positions where your ability to not just make an argument, but bring other people around to your point of view becomes absolutely crucial. And that's more and more true the higher you go up in leadership.
And I also thought it was interesting that, and I'm not sure why, but this idea that the willingness to accept that you might be wrong or openness to new experiences is something that, I guess, because if you're looking at a science and there is a proof and there's a theorem and there's a, almost an asset and a liability and things balance out, that there isn't that notion of that wrong is okay. Wrong can lead to a really wonderful outcome, right, from what you originally expect. So do you find in researching this and talking to people that those in some of those more clinical or mathematical areas, is the opposite true? Is it true that they may be less prone to being open to new experiences or accept that they might be wrong?
So I think in a lot of the STEM disciplines, you expect to deal with other people who share your exact values. And yes, there is a right answer. There's a formula that will get you there. And engineers are really good at talking to other engineers. Where they get into trouble is talking to people who don't have an engineering mindset and are making more of a personal, emotional connection to the issues, and that just frustrates them, and pretty soon communication breaks down like crazy. So you need to know how to meet your audience in whatever world they're in. And I don't think that's really taught in the STEM programs. There just isn't enough time running through that curriculum to go, how do we deal with different people? In most of the liberal arts fields, that's just woven into every class. It's right there underneath, and you're picking up that ability. And I sometimes think that a college seminar is the best possible preparation for a corporate boardroom. Because you're doing the same thing. You got a lot of people with different opinions, and it's not totally clear what the right answer is. You're going to have to explore, and you're going to have to mix and match. And if you can work well in that setting, you can get a lot of stuff done. And if you're just very fond of your point of view and you just repeat it louder and louder, the more the conversation goes, you're not going to bring anyone with you.
And what I always think is sort of humorous in many ways is that we actually created a whole nother category of job type because those engineers aren't very good at talking to people who don't understand them. And like this thing called product manager, when I got to CBS Interactive, I had no idea what that meant. And I'm like, what is that? And essentially someone said to me, well, we're the people who can basically be the translators for the engineers to talk to real people about what they're trying to do. And I said, that's unbelievable. There's actually a job for that because there is this incapability to translate the stuff that they're doing and bring that to an advertiser, say, and actually explain it in a way that they can understand. And the advertiser can't talk to the engineer and say, like, well, I want these 3 things. Can't you just do it? They need some intermediary. And I guess that there are going to be more and more jobs that help bridge that gap between those of us who exist in the complicated gray area of the world and the engineer, math, science types. Have you found that there are just these new jobs that are out there that never existed even 10 or 15 years ago?
There are a huge number of those jobs, and I'm so glad you brought up the project manager, product manager opportunity. I tell the story of one woman 2 years out of college who ends up being in charge of internationalizing a website, WikiHow, and they want to have a Spanish language version and a Dutch language version and a Thai language version. And she's got to figure out, how do we make it work in all these countries? So they have a whole controversy that blares up because one of their most popular articles is called How Do You Kiss? And that works beautifully in England and Germany and the U.S. But in the Arabic world, it ended up being a real point of tension of, oh my God, can you put this up? Or is this going to liberate women in ways that will stress everyone out? And she managed to work the different elements of the community, the women who were curious and thought, hey, this would be a nice article to have, and the sort of righteous guy who didn't want it. And she got everyone to agreement, and the article's up, and goodness knows how many thousands of page views a day it's getting. But you need that ability to get the whole crowd to come together on something. And a little bit of it's engineering. You got to make the translation work. But so much of it is people. And for all of those kinds of jobs, they're growing fast. I mean, they're like 40,000 openings a year for them. That kind of background is really helpful.
And obviously in this kind of economy, one which is so different than, say, our parents' economy where, you worked for a company for 45 years and I was about to say graduated, you retired, you had a pension, that was it. We are going to have lots of different jobs. And you also make the point that there is something about the grit that you develop in some of these liberal arts trainings and backgrounds that maybe make those workers a little bit more capable of transitioning either within an organization and not take that straight career path that I'm going to be an engineer, then I'm going to be an engineering manager, and then I'm going to be a senior engineer. That this is a different kind of employment landscape, isn't it?
It really is. And in fact, there's some good data from the Census Bureau that shows that between college graduation and your early 40s, you'll end up having 11 or 12 different jobs. So this ability to retool and start over and pick up a new field is absolutely crucial. And what's really interesting about the numbers is if you've only got a community college degree, you're probably switching jobs about 11 times. If you've got a full-fledged 4-year degree, you're switching it 12 and a half times. And some of that is you're getting more promotions, but you're also more adaptable. And we traditionally think of college as a way to get job security. And I think actually college is a way to get job mobility so that when your old field comes to an end, you don't sit there and go, I'm never going to find work again. The only thing I can do is something the world doesn't want. And instead you go, okay, deal me a new hand. I'm ready to play again.
We'll be back with more of our interview with George Anders in just a moment. If you would like to get on the air, give us a holler, 855-411-JILL, or just send us an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Young, old, it doesn't matter. She's here to help you. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back with Jill on Money, and I guess that everyone very hyper-focused on the jobs report just released. And as we often do, we talk about wages and how much people are making. And, you know, when we report and when I go on CBS radio or TV and we're talking about a jobs report, we'll also often say, you know, what is the average hourly earnings? What are people making? What are the increases? And that's, of course, all workers. But if you are hyper fixated on just how much money your recent graduate is making or what your soon-to-be graduate is going to make, you may be missing the ball. You really may be. That's according to our guest, George Anders. He's the author of You Can Do Anything, The Surprising Power of a Useless Liberal Arts Education. Here's more of our interview with George Anders. You also say that fixating on these starting salaries, quote, blinds us to the value of mobility. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What is it that we're not giving those kids who are coming out? What are we robbing them of? Not just that, you know, you could make more over time if you have a little bit more creative, but what else about that starting salary is really keeping people locked into a job that maybe they don't even like?
So another thing that's really essential, and this pairs with it, is the ability to create your own job and to build something in a zone that's unknown. So I tell the story of Andy Anderegg, who was a fine arts major from Kansas, and she liked writing short fiction, and no one was publishing her stories. So she ended up going to work for Groupon and writing those crazy little teasers of, you know, come to the bowling alley and, you know, we'll do all the things that you're going to do there. And it was paying like $33,000 a year. But the next thing she does is she goes, you know what, we need a training program for other new writers like me. And we need a campus recruiting program. And pretty soon she's, you know, her salary's up 40-50% because she's created more opportunity. They need someone to run the whole writing program. She becomes the managing editor. She ends up setting herself up as a consultant now to other companies that need help creating digital content, and she's earning triple what she did originally, mostly on her own initiative. She's defined new jobs, new opportunities, and she's spotted needs. And this is such a valuable thing to come out of college to be able to do, is to write your own future, as opposed to just waiting for someone else to write a job spec for you. That the best roads are not yet paved, and you need that ability to find a road that other people don't yet see, and to build a career there, and you can do very, very well.
In the book, you talk about how there has to be a certain amount of audacity in what you're willing to see and also talk about with somebody, because the job that you ultimately occupy may not exist right now.
Yeah, and you know, I tell other stories in the book of people with anthropology degrees, and if you go look at career guides from about 10, 15 years ago, they say anthropology is the most useless degree. You know, short of being an anthropology professor, there's absolutely nothing you can do with it. And all of a sudden, that's not true anymore, because there's no end of companies that are got websites up, they've got global reach, they're trying to connect with people, and they realize we don't understand our users. And if we don't understand them well, we're going to build a product wrong. So all of a sudden, they need usability experts, user experience experts, and what better people to hire than anthropology majors? And you're not going into the Guatemalan village and looking at how people make stone pots. you're going into the artist's colony in New Mexico and you're finding out how people sell stone pots. You're using that same sort of ability to probe user habits and to build up knowledge of people. And suddenly, anthro is a pretty relevant degree.
So you write this whole book, and you yourself, I imagine, you have, as you said, long list of degrees and liberal arts. What was surprising as you went through this process? What did you learn that maybe you weren't even thinking about before you started the project?
So I'll give you a couple happy surprises and then one unhappy surprise.
Oh, I don't want the unhappy one.
Well, we're going to get it anyway because we have to get it fixed.
Okay.
And, you know, it's like going to the doctor. You have to identify the problem in order to cure it.
Okay, doctor, give it to me.
Okay. So the good ones. It's much easier for people to build up social capital now, which means having a network of people that can help you do things. And whether it's LinkedIn or some specialty services on college campuses like Switchboard HQ, you can find alumni who are in the field you want to be in. You can chat them up. You can get introductions. And you're no longer stuck in that position where you go, I don't even know how to get into this field. It takes a bit of initiative, but I think that's a big equalizer for liberal arts grads because the old style model where you wait for the campus job fair and, you know, the accounting firms come and the big tech companies come and there's no one that comes and says, I want to hire a sociology major. But you can go on databases and find grads from your own school with your degree who are working good jobs, and you can use them as the ladder that pulls you up. So that was really fun, and that was nice, and it was good to see. What I underestimated was the amount of faculty that go, this isn't our problem. Our job is to teach people how to, you know, start on the road toward a PhD in my field, and it's up to them to figure out jobs. And colleges are charging too much for the privilege to go there, for them to say, hey, career is your issue. A lot of room to be done for schools to say, hey, we want to provide internships, mentorships, introductions, helpful career advice. It's starting to happen.
Here was my most delightful moment. I think it came on page 121 and 122 because it essentially justified my own career path, which is, you know, that's why I read all these books anyway. I've got to figure out why, you know, my liberal arts education was useful. But one of the things that you tell a story about this woman, Danielle Shear from George Washington University. And she says, by articulating complicated technical or strategic ideas in plain English, you'd be amazed at how much progress we've made solving problems. So I want to bring that plain English thing. She says, I don't use my degree to write code. I use it constantly in working with clients. It helps me be clear about what the client wants. And so basically these jobs that straddle technical and non-technical areas, being able to speak English helps. And I always felt like when someone said to me, yeah, how'd you get on the news? How'd you do that? I said, you know, I could just talk about really complicated financial stuff in a way that people could understand. That was as simple as it got. I think that is the truth, though, that there are these areas that people they're quite murky, whether it's medicine, it could be law, it could be finance, it could be anything like that. And if you just talk to someone who will talk to you at your own level, the way you can take it in, you can build a career around that. I was sort of like, yeah, that's why it happened, not just because I was so lucky.
And in fact, it's a skill that we undervalue, that anyone can keep a complicated field sounding complicated, and it takes a real gift to make it simple. And you look at the Nobel laureates, Richard Feynman could explain to you why the Challenger blew up and just do it with a glass of ice water and a ring. Knowing how to keep it simple is unbelievably valuable and unbelievably rare.
Well, thanks so much to George Anders. His book is great. I would actually go out and get it right now. You Can Do Anything, The Surprising Power of a, quote, useless liberal arts education. Thanks again to George. If you missed any part of the interview, just go to JillOnMoney.com and click on the YouTube channel link at the top of the page, and you can check it out. We'll be right back.
Have a question? Call anytime, 24/7, 855-411-JILL. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back with Jill on Money. This is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. I'm Jill Schlesinger. And I love when you send follow-up questions. It's so awesome. If you've asked a question on the program or you've been on the air with us and you have a follow-up, it's great. Send us a note, ask Jill at jillonmoney.com, or you can always call us. We can get you back on the air, 855-411-JILL. That's what Neil did. He lives out in Oregon, very young, in his 20s, and he was maxing out his retirement account, and he and his partner make about $85,000 a year, and they wanted to know about, how much money they should be spending on a home. He said that it looks like that they were going to have to spend about $275,000 for a home. Wanted to know if that's too much. And he wrote a follow-up question, and he says, as my girlfriend and I have been continuing to discuss this further, we came up with some more questions. We came into the question, how much should we be looking to spend? It isn't a question of how much we can physically pencil out, but rather, how do you decide what is reasonable, a reasonable amount to spend on a house? So here's a funny thing about that, which is that, people have always said, how much money should you spend on housing? And it used to be, we would say, as certified financial planners, about 30% of your gross. Now I think more people are saying 35%. Maybe if you live on one of these hot housing markets, it'll have to be up to 40%, but it really depends. So what I would like to think about it is this, you want to spend as little as possible to get in the kind of house you want. And hopefully that stays within that, 1/3 of what your adjusted gross income. So if you make $85,000, 1/3 of that for housing, that would include the principal, the interest, right? The mortgage principal and interest, your homeowner's insurance, right? Your taxes. Don't forget that. And then you're going to have to put in, say, another 1% of the purchase price just to keep the house up. So hopefully that'll give you a good range. The second question that Neil has is, I know in normal investing, you're better off not trying to time the market. Does that ring true in real estate? Is it different because it's a big purchase? Just want to know, where I can get, how I can get trusted advice in the local market. You never can get trusted advice in the local market. But what I would say is this. You're investing in a home to live there for a long time. So no, you don't want to time the market. The only reason you would time the market is if potentially you were saying, maybe if you're a seller, you might say, wow, the market's really hot. I'd rather sell it today than wait for something bad to happen. But if you're buying and you know that you can afford a home and it's a fixed rate mortgage and it's 30 years, then I think you really have to take the plunge. Okay, the third part of this question from Neil is that he and his girlfriend were pre-approved for more than they would want to spend on a house. When it comes to a down payment, how much money should we keep outside for our emergency funds? So, the emergency reserve fund should still be that 6 to 12 months of your living expenses, but your living expenses are now going to be higher, right? Because you've got this new home. So don't forget to put that in there. And again, presume that you're going to spend about 1% of the purchase price on your ongoing maintenance. It may be more. I don't know. But, it kind of depends on what kind of shape the house is in. So I think that's it. Thank you so much, Neil. Love that. Fabulous. How much time do I have, sir? All right. Nate is a physician. He makes $800,000 a year. They've got $800,000 in retirement. He and his wife, they're 41. He's got $550,000 in a 401k, $110,000 in a cash balance, some Roth money, and wife has $150,000 in an old work rollover. It's making difficult to do a backdoor Roth for her. I can't stomach all the taxes. What should I do for her? I'll tell you what you should do for her. Don't worry about it. Don't do a whole life policy for her. But there's no way to, you see, if you have an existing Roth, the backdoor Roth is a hard calculation because you have to actually convert everything, right? That's the problem. So he wants to know, should I just have her roll over with a non-deductible IRA contribution? Should I roll it to a Roth? Is there a way to get her 401k to start doing a backdoor Roth? She doesn't work. I'm able to do $53,000 into our plan, $25,000 into my cash balance, $18,000 of my 401k could be a Roth, but because of my tax bracket, I choose the deferred option. You know what I have to say about this? Get over it. You got plenty of money. Don't kill yourself about the stupid backdoor Roth. What do you think, Mark? Are you in that? Are you on that? Come on. This dude makes $800,000 a year. Okay? He's got $800,000 in retirement. Stop it. It's enough. Pay your tax and move on. And also, I wouldn't even worry about converting her rollover. You're in the high tax bracket. Why do it? You might as well wait to see what happens with taxes anyway. Maybe you're going to get a little drop in your rate. Who knows? We've got to wait to see what happens. But Nate, chill out. Oh my God, I can't believe the number of hours people agonize over worrying about taxes when, I mean, I know it's important, but honestly, just relax. And you got the money to pay it and you're going to be okay. Okay? $800,000 a year. That's a 1% problem, my man. You're listening to Jill on Money, 855-411-JILL. Send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back. You're back with Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, we would love to hear from you. Our phone number is 855-411-JILL. You can send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Gary writes that he has installed a solar electric system on his house this year, and he was expecting a 30% federal tax credit. Will the new tax plan honor this deduction? Thank you, Gary. Oh, my God, Gary, I don't know. There's so many unknowns about this tax plan. And that is something that I know is annoying, but there's no way to know this. And the problem that I really see is you've already spent the money. You've already done it. You probably already factored this into your calculation of doing it. I hope that you keep the deduction. But who knows? The plan, the framework actually said they wanted to get rid of a lot of credits and deductions. The only thing they said was absolutely preserved was a charitable deduction and the mortgage interest deduction. So that wouldn't be bad news for your credit. What are you doing? You taking a picture of me? He's taking a picture of me in the middle of the last segment because I'm putting lipstick on. You know what? I hate you right now, Mark. Anyway, any deduction, credit, it's on the table. Don't think anything is sacrosanct. It's not. So the best advice I can give you is you've already spent the money. Don't worry. Hopefully you will get this credit, energy efficiency. These are all good things. If you don't, there's nothing you can really do. You just think about this. You raise the cost basis of your home. Maybe that's about the best you can do. But we won't know till we have a final plan. Don't make too many big tax decisions before we get those details. Thanks very much for writing. Hey, thanks so much for listening. It's been a great show. If you missed any part of our interview with George Anders, go to jillonmoney.com. Link at the top of the page to YouTube. You'll hear the whole Anders interview. We will be back next week with more of your questions. If you want to get on the air, 855-411-JILL. Send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.